See this book? Throw it out today, friends, because today I'm going to show you how to can stewed tomatoes without the ball book. However, I am going to go over the ball method with you because I believe legally I should give you safety tips on how to safely handle things one way or the other. The old method is still safe. However, with laws that have changed, I am going to give you the new method options as well, because that's my responsibility to teach you how to be safe. You can decipher which method you want to use. I use an older method just because that's what I've always used and because that's what my grandma used and the grandma before her used. So either one is safe. I've used them both for years, never had any issue with it. So let's get started. So for starters, it's really important to have your area set up because once you start canning, it goes really quick. So I've got some lids ready. I haven't warmed them up yet. I've got my little picker-upper thing. I have towels and they're doubled up because when you put them on a table like this is an antique table, it can tarnish it. It can leave rings on it. So you don't want to do that. I have some jars over here. Now this is just working on my tomatoes first of all. They have been cleaned and they have been washed. I'm going to put them in the oven, okay, at your oven's lowest setting to keep them hot. It'll also sterilize them in the process. I do not have a dishwasher. I am my own dishwasher. So I can't put them in there. Otherwise, I would suggest doing that because it's one of the easiest ways. However, dishwashers can also be really bad for sterilizing these because a lot of dishwashers, even now, modern, can leave a residue on this, which can ruin your product that you're canning. So just be careful. Make sure you know that before you proceed. So I got some of my jars ready, just some of them. These, again, just for the tomatoes. I got this area set up. I've got my canner getting ready to start going. I've got my pot for my tomatoes that are getting ready to go. I'm going to use this pot to blanch my tomatoes to get the skins off of them. And so you blanch them in here for just a couple minutes, then take them out, put them into cold water, and you just pull the skin off. It's very easy. It's especially easy when you have tomatoes like this because these tomatoes, they're already, you can see this guy, in fact, I'm not even going to use, but they're already, you know, in a state of decomposition. So, alright guys, I'm going to try my darndest to take you through this process start to finish. I cannot promise you that I'm going to get everything because when you're canning, and if you're used to canning, you know this, you kind of got to work quick. And my brain isn't on videoing, it's on canning things properly. So, my pot of boiling water is going. I have a bowl here. Now, normally it's suggested that you put your tomatoes in, blanch them, and put them in ice cold water. But honest to goodness, who in their right mind has enough ice cold water for a whole box of tomatoes? So what I do is I put them in here, I blanch them, I'll put them over into this bowl, and then I'll run them over under really cold water. And then I'll put them right here on this, whatever you call it, towel, to peel them. So I'm going to show you real quick how I do that. So a couple minutes, or just a minute really, even 30 seconds can sometimes be enough. Depends on your tomatoes, how ripe they are. I'm going to do a couple more real quick and then I'm going to run them under that cold water. Now at some point you may have to stop and let the water get back up to temperature. I'm going to run these under cold water while I'm here. I'm going to do this for the entire box. Alright, while my water is heating back up, I'm going to show you how easy it is to peel these. See? The peel just comes right off. If it's a really ripe tomato, it'll come off really, really easy. And that's what you want. You want really ripe tomatoes for this. They smell good too. And then you're going to just set those aside. How do you tell if you have a really ripe tomato? Well, if you got red tomatoes, they're normally the reddest ones. and they're starting to get soft. The less ripe tomatoes are going to take a little bit longer, or they're going to just be a little bit harder to peel. Now, why do we peel tomatoes before we cook them? And I feel like that's probably common sense. We peel them because the skin takes longer, and what I'm doing is just making a hole and starting to peel. The skin takes longer to process and break down. Now, with my tomato canning for stewed tomatoes, I don't use a pressure cooker, a pressure canner. Oh my gosh, I don't use a pressure canner. Whatever shall we do? And that is because it's just, you know what, people didn't always use pressure canners, and I've never used pressure canners for stewed tomatoes. Now, other things, yes, but not stewed tomatoes. Because the process of breaking down happens during canning, and you're going to cook these first to a certain extent. I just don't do it. My Aunt Virgie never really did it unless she was making something else. My grandma, I don't believe she ever used a pressure canner for stewed tomatoes either. In fact, I've got one jar left from my Aunt Virgie. She canned tomatoes a couple years ago, and it's still just as good without a pressure canner. I just opened it the other day. Alright, so see how easy it's coming off? That's why you blanch them, to get those skins off. After this process, I'm going to cut them, probably quarter them, and then take the hard parts out, and any brown spots that might be in there, like, you see this one had a brown spot right here. Right here. Alright, I'm going to finish this up. Okay. These things are going to be lifesavers. You need to have something to put your tomatoes in. Let my Germex back there. Because I have a very small kitchen, I've just got to improvise, and these are lifesavers in small spaces. Now, what's next? I've got my space here cleaned off. I've got my bowl. I got my Dutch oven ready to go. Unfortunately, I don't have a stock pot. My canner is my biggest pot. So I'm probably going to have to do these stewed tomatoes in batches, which is absolutely fine. You're going to adapt to what you have. Yes, I will be investing in a stock pot in a couple of days. But for now, this is what I have. So what comes next? These tomatoes need to get cut up, cored, and any bad spots taken out of them. And then they're going to go into the Dutch oven, and we're going to make stewed tomatoes. At that point, after they're stewed, we're going to put them in our hot jars, and we're going to go ahead and give them a water bath. So I'll take you through that now. So a lot of these, I'm just going to cut them in half, if we're being honest. They're going to break down pretty well. But you need to get any of the green spots out that are in there. This one, this big one, I'm going to quarter him. But I like my stewed tomatoes kind of chunky. So I am going to leave a lot of them bigger. Really, honest to goodness, this part of the process is just to get any bad spots out and to get that core out. So like this one, I'm just going to leave it. But then I'll do, you know, you alternate sizes so that you get the best that you can get. To preference. There's no right or wrong way. Alright, I'm going to finish doing this, and then we'll get started on the rest. Okay, so this pan, this is my Dutch oven. I've got about a cup of water in here, and all the tomatoes that I can fit. Unfortunately, I could only fit about one of those pans in here. Which is fine. I knew I was going to have to do it in batches anyhow. So, I'm not actually making stewed tomatoes and then canning stewed tomatoes. I'm going to cook these down a little bit, just a little bit. I'm going to add salt, and I'm going to add sugar, and to get that stewed tomato consistency. And then when it comes time for me to pull these out and make stewed tomatoes, I'll actually go through the process of adding peppers and onions and garlic and stuff then. The reason I do that is because I use these tomatoes not only for stewed tomatoes, but I'll uncan them and turn them into fresh spaghetti sauce or marinara. Now I am going to go back and get another box of these. This was a huge box for only $12, and I am going to make some marinara. But I want to be able to have these and use them to their fullest potential, okay? If I go ahead and I add all the ingredients now and just make stewed tomatoes, and I have 12 quarts of stewed tomatoes, and that's all we're going to be eating. But if I make them with just the salt and the sugar, and then have that base available for the stewed tomatoes, I feel like I can better utilize it that way. So I'm going to put the top on. I'm going to let them cook. I'm going to add salt. You're going to add about a tablespoon or so of salt. Salt is a preservative. I like salt. And then you're going to add about the same of sugar. I get this sugar. This is the organic sugar cane. It's maybe about a tablespoon and a half. I get my spoon and I'm going to stir it up. You don't have to stir it too much. Once it starts cooking down, all that salt and sugar is going to get in there and be fine. You don't want to cook this on high. You don't want it to scorch or burn or anything like that. You're going to cook it on a medium-low heat, and then you're going to get it to a consistency where it's still chunky, but it's not liquidy. Where'd my top go? Now, if you have really liquidy tomatoes, you're going to want to cook it down to get a lot of the liquid out, but not all of it. Obviously, you need some liquid to can your tomatoes, so I'm going to show you that next. Okay, so these are starting to cook down now. I've taken the top off. You can see there's lots of water because tomatoes release a lot of water. So I have it on a medium setting. I have between a low and high, I have between 2 and 8 on my stovetop setting, which I think a lot of you probably have too. When they start breaking down, you can see some of them have started breaking down. I take the top off and I allow it to kind of cook down a little more without the top on. Now you can see that this was filled up to here, so it's dropped down a lot, but it's because of all this liquid that it's released, all this water. So by taking the top off, it's actually going to let some of that water evaporate and come out. So I just want it to not be as clear as it is right now. The clear shows you that it has a lot of water in it. So I'm going to let that cook out a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and start the canning process. As you can see, it's still very chunky. That one needs to come off. But it'll break down a little bit more and not be as chunky. But you want some nice pieces in there. So we'll go ahead and finish this up. In the meantime, while these tomatoes are finishing the cookout process, this is when I go ahead and I put my tops in the top part of my canner with this rack. I'm not quite sure how many I'll use. I kind of go as I go along. This is just how I do it, guys. You'll find whatever works for you. So I put them in there as my canner is heating up. It was already hot. I turned it on this morning. But I'll put them in there and then I'll pull them out as I start canning. Now my jars are in my oven. So they're heated up. I did wash them and sterilize, or I washed them in hot soapy water, let them dry out a little bit, and then I went ahead and put them in the oven. My oven goes down to 170 degrees. Your oven may go higher or it may go lower. Whatever it is, whatever your lowest setting is on your oven, put it on that. And put your, sorry, let me stir this. And then you can put your jars in there. Don't go any higher than that. You don't want your jars don't need to be, you know, super duper hot. But they need to be at least 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So as long as they're at 160 degrees, you're good to go. Alright guys, so most of that water has cooked off. Not all of it, still some water in there. Obviously you're going to have water with your tomatoes. Now you're probably going to hear my water bath canner in the background. I can't do anything about that, so I'll try to speak loudly. So I got my bigger jars out. I'm only taking a few jars out at a time. These are very hot. Please put a towel underneath of your jars when you put them on a countertop. When you put hot jars on a countertop, whether it's in this process or after taking them out of your water bath canner, if they hit a cold countertop, depending on the type of countertop you have, they can bust open. Okay, so make sure you have a towel underneath them at all times. I've got my handy dandy little funnel here, and I'm just going to ladle these tomatoes in here. You need to leave a head space as well. So when you get to the end, what is headspace? Well, that's the space that you're leaving right here. And the reason for that is because it expands during the canning process. Now I'm just taking this and I'm getting some of the bubbles out. I'm just going to go ahead and can my other ones real quick. Now in this instance, I'm using quart jars. That is because we eat a lot at one time. You're going to see I do some pint jars as well. But that's for individual servings. I'm just going to show you on these two real quick. I'm going to get my tops out real quick. Be careful not to touch the rubber ring. Oh, but you're still going to need to position it on top of the jars. Fingertip strength, guys. Fingertip strength. You do not want your jars tight. Say, I'm barely turning it. I'm turning it till I can barely turn it anymore with just fingertip strength. You know what? If you have little kids, have your little kids do it and tell them only tighten it as little as possible. Okay? There's those two. We're going to do the rest, then we're going to go ahead and put them in the canner. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my jars in here. Make sure you stagger them. They're hot. Should have used the picker-upper thing. Stagger them one on each side so that it's even. Okay, it's not tilting to one side or the other. Now here's the thing. I'm only doing 4 quarts right now. I do have some left in my pot, but you remember I have that whole other batch to do. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on the next batch, leave what's in here, and then I'll be canning more. So I'm going to go ahead and drop these in. I'm putting them in for 20 minutes, okay? They need to be in. When it starts boiling, then you start counting an extra 10 to 20 minutes, okay? So we're going to go ahead and drop them down in here. There needs to be 1 to 2 inches of heads of space on top, so I'm going to go ahead and add some more water. Hot water preferably. This is why you keep cold water on hand, but unfortunately I do not. I'm adding more water. Do not pour it on top of the tops. So here's what they look like. It's going to come back up to a boil. I should have forgot to mention to wipe off the tops of the lids. You're going to see this because this was on the side of the jar. But to wipe off the rim of the lid before you put your top on, okay? You know what? If you forget about it, it's not the end of the world, but you should do it. Okay, I'm going to put the top back on. I'm going to bring these babies to a boil again. When they start boiling, then we'll start counting. Okay, so my timer's gone off. My canner is done with the tomatoes. I'm going to pull the top off here. Pull the top off away from your body, from all the steam, okay? I'm going to come down in here and get my little handles. I don't have special tools, so I'm just going to pull them up. I'm going to let them sit here for just a second. I want you to see that bubbly goodness of what is canned tomatoes. I did pour off very quickly the excess water that was on top. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull them out and put them on my table.
Is that the last one?
That's the last one for this batch. So the most important thing here is to restrain from touching the lid for at least 24 hours. You can see they're still bubbling up, but you can also see the water. Some have more water than others, and they're going to separate, okay? This is completely normal. Alright guys, so that big box of tomatoes made 4 quarts and 1, 2, 3, 4, oh wait, yeah, 4 quarts and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pints. Now, it actually made more than that, but I made a batch. I kept some for us for dinner tonight. A lot of these jars sealed as soon as they came out of the canner. You can see they're still bubbling up. Now I do want to show you a difference real quick. You can see here, or you can really see on this one back here, see that water in the bottom? I find this tends to happen more with quart jars than with the pint jars. Though you can see a little bit in this one. You're gonna have to judge and pick and choose how much liquid you want in your jars. With my pints, I decided to go with a little bit less liquid. You only need enough liquid in your jar. You really only have to fill the jar up halfway with liquid because the tomatoes are going to release more liquid when they're during the canning process. So that's what I did with these tomatoes and the pints. I only filled them up about right here with liquid, and it filled up the rest of the way during the canning process. You see this one back here has some liquid in it, and it's fine. It's fine to have that liquid in it. It's normal. You're gonna have some liquid, but you can adjust it to however you'd like. I'm well pleased with this batch. I think I am going to go back and get some more and actually just can some more because obviously this isn't going to last us through an entire winter. I would like to have enough to where I could at least have some marinara and some more of this, the quart jars saved up for us to eat or go through 1 to 2 quarts per week, okay? We normally have some type of tomato or spaghetti sauce or soup once a week in the wintertime. So we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, here, this is a great start. Like I said, canning tomatoes isn't glamorous. It's hard work, but it sure is something that really makes you appreciate all the hard work that goes into all of this. And that's how you can tomatoes.